Hello, everyone. Origin Park is a product of the River Heritage Conservancy, whose mission is to bring a regional park and wetlands conservancy to southern Indiana. Origin Park will be approximately 600 acres of parkland open to the entire region. The park seeks to build upon the momentum of the current developments and coordination of Clarksville, Jeffersonville, and New Albany Greenway Trail System. Our region is poised to be a hub of walkable, bikeable trails and outdoor recreation. Today, we are visiting with Scott Martin. Scott is the executive director of the River Heritage Conservancy, and Scott is the face of Origin Park at this point. Scott, it's great having you, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Mike. Always happy to talk to y'all.
I appreciate you being here. Let's start out, if you will, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have been doing this parks work now for about 25 years, and have been married for 25 years this year as well. So I've done tried to do the marriage thing and the work thing simultaneously. I've been very lucky to be a part of park teams in Idaho, Virginia, Louisville, Kentucky, and now Southern Indiana over that span. And spent most of my time working on building new parks, doing new systems, doing them intentionally, usually to reshape a community and help a community advance. And I've been very, very blessed to be in that space because it's one of those rare jobs that with certainty that the best days of what you do will probably happen long after I've departed this earth. And to be a part of that sort of legacy over the horizon stuff is an enormous gift, and I'm incredibly fortunate to do that. I grew up the son of a city manager, so I grew up in local government in a little town called Hopewell, Virginia, a community very similar to Clarksville, outside of Richmond, Virginia, which is very similar to Louisville, of 25,000 people. So I grew up in communities like this, and then had the good fortune to go out to Boise State University in the Blue Turf, and did undergrad and graduate work out there. And that was really instructive to me, Michael, because that's one of those cities in the West that people often think of as being a great city to live in, and it is. It's an extraordinary place. But those are the cities that are very attractive to people these days. You know, they lead in wealth creation and job creation in a lot of respects. And with COVID, those are the communities that are growing very, very fast now as folks leave more heavily populated areas like Seattle, San Francisco, LA, and are choosing where to locate. And they're picking places like that. And the reason I tell that story is to say that Boise's success is a result of investments it made in parks and infrastructure like Origin Park, similar, about 40 and 50 years ago. And the decisions they made then is what made their growth and their economic dynamic situation today possible.
Well, we are certainly fortunate to have you. Just a little history. Your work with the Parklands.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was lucky to be, I believe, employee number 3 there, as it was just an idea on paper, and some of that paper was done in pencil at that point in time, wasn't even ink, but then was part of that team that brought that out of the off paper and into reality and into the park it is today. That I believe last year hosted about 3.5 million visits, and we
Wow.
did that construction wise in a pretty short span of time, about 10 years, but 15 years from probably when the idea kicked off. So that's also a conservancy model. That was a group of folks that said, hey, what if we took the best of the private sector and the best of the public sector, put them together and achieve something really special, because they recognize neither can do it on their own. The
Of
way we
course,
do big stuff today is figuring out new partnerships and new ways to do stuff.
of course, we're talking, for those that may not know, the Parklands of Floyd's Fork, which is out in the east end of, basically the east end of Louisville,
Mm-hmm.
out that direction. We are certainly fortunate to have you. Certainly fortunate that you and the River Heritage Conservancy has chosen these 600 acres to bring here. I had a question for you, if I may. Gil Penalosa, founder of the 880 Cities, says that parks and cities should be designed with the ideal user, age 8 and 80. How will
Mm-hmm.
Origin Park fill that need?
Yeah, it's a great question. Gil's one of our thought leaders. And unfortunately, he was supposed to be here with us this past year for the kickoff, but COVID blocked that. basically, Michael, the thought is this, that if you build a park or an amenity that an 8-year-old can use and that an 80-year-old can use, that you cover everybody in between. And our really point is that this should be a park that every person should be able to go out and enjoy. You don't have to be a member of a sports team. You don't have to be an uber athlete that wears lycra and skin tight clothes and makes them look good. This is a park for all of us. It's what we consider, what we call the 90% user. What does an average person do in an average park on an average day? For us, it all starts with circulation. How do you move through the park on bikes, walking? And I don't know if folks have been out on the Greenway on a Saturday lately. There's an explosion of use on the Greenway that would have been impossible to even imagine 3 to 5 years ago before it was constructed. My counsel to Phil Hendershot and the folks on that team is they are significantly undercounting usage. The Discovery Trail has been the same way in Clarksville, just watching how people are using those trails. And that's our argument, is that these things never seem necessary when they're just a concept, but the second you build them and you see people just absolutely take them into their lives, they can't imagine life without it. And that's the best part of our work, is just making those things available. Look, when I was out in Idaho, as I mentioned earlier, I took a lot of ribbing from those folks who ripped on me from the American South and the Midwest. They said, you folks don't exercise, you don't get outdoors, you're not healthy. And I bought into it for too long. But it finally occurred to me that it's true, because we didn't build things that people could do for their lives. A lot of times we built great youth sports complexes, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're great. Or we built parks with a lot of playgrounds and aquatic facilities, and they're wonderful. But we really didn't think about what a 50-year-old would want to do in the park, or a 70-year-old. They did that out west, and they built it so you could walk from neighborhoods to green spaces to mountains. And as a result, they are healthier. And the parklands and the Ohio River Greenway, all these things prove the same thing here. The residents of Clarksville want to get out, they want to be mobile, if we provide them beautiful places to do it, safe places to do it, and clean places to do it. And that's how we see ourselves shaping the community, because it's that crazy idea that's uniquely American. You shouldn't have to make a lot of money to have a great quality of life. And you know what? When you come into our public lands, no one checks your bank account. No one checks your political affiliation. These are our public spaces that all of us own. And we really think that that's a precious American tradition, and one that we, without apologies, believe is one of our best traditions that we want to help provide.
So an old guy like me and a young person can feel safe coming to Origin Park. Uh, I've also heard many people refer to it as Origins with an S, but it's Origin Park. Am I correct?
You are correct. It's singular tense, and you can imagine the knockdown, drag out meetings we had on naming the park that had the S fight in them. But Origin speaks to the stories of the landscape. As we dove into the site, the story really came home to us, Michael. I will tell you this: I'll never work on a more historic site culturally than this one, and it doesn't look like it right now. It's pretty beat up and battered in places, but that doesn't take away from the stories that happen there. You have, and Origin is an homage to that. It's the beginning of the state of Indiana. The first land grant for Indiana was here at the Clark Cabin within this footprint. You know the story very well. Clarksville is the first city in the Northwest Territory. The origin of our native peoples, there's 12,000 years of settlement that we know that occurred there. This is the origin of the bison migration across the Ohio twice a year. There would have been millions of pounds, millions of bison and elk moving through here just 500 years ago. It's not that long ago. You have to go back to that. It was the origin of freedom. If you were an enslaved person in bondage, if you were of color, and you got across the Ohio River, your story of freedom began when your feet first touched ground in southern Indiana. So for us, the power of these stories to us is why we got to the name Origin, is these are a lot of stories of creation. And then looking forward, if we can be so bold, we want it to be the origin of a new idea of what it means to live in southern Indiana and Clarksville. What it means to live here, the beginning of a new story, of a livable, dynamic, welcoming community for all. That when it comes to economic development and attracting businesses, and folks say, well, I'm looking at Indianapolis, I'm looking at Nashville, and I'm looking at the Louisville area, we have a leg up, because we'll offer the best quality of life, the cleanest air, the cleanest water. And we think in 50 years, that's a really good position to be in.
Talking about the park, as we have been, one of the questions that I hear from folks a lot is is there going to be an entrance fee to get into the park to enjoy these facilities?
There will not be an entrance fee.
Pretty short and sweet answer.
Pretty short and sweet.
Well, and I appreciate that. Um, Another thing that Gil Penalosa said and brought up was that parks uh, should be passive, active, and contemplative. Will Origin Park be an active, passive, or contemplative park, or will it be all three?
Yeah, that's a great story. If you give me a second here, Michael, let me pull up because people don't want to look at our ugly mugs for too long. Let me see if I can do a share screen here, if you don't mind, and let's dive in a little bit here to the park design for folks that want to see it. All right, so that it should catch up in a second. Here's a little lag. So that is the master plan for Origin Park, and it frames the park and its placement in our community, in communities. The first big takeaway is that it's less than a mile and a half as a crow flies from downtown Louisville. And that means it's within 30 minutes of about 1.2 million people. And when we're planning this park, we think in terms of 100 years. So we think this park will be within 30 minutes of 2 million people. So that's kind of our thinking. When you look at the master plan, something probably jumps out, even to folks who aren't used to looking at park master plans, and it's the light green. And if you look at that light green, Michael, you know it. Those are the lawn areas. There's only about 35 acres of lawn in this park, and that's turf that you're used to. That's a very small amount. Very small amount. In fact, I dare say Ashland Park has close to this amount of lawn in it. And that speaks to your question. We see this landscape as being much different than Waterfront Park in Louisville and much different than our parks in Southern Indiana because we don't need duplication. What we need is something different. And we need the landscape to stand on its own 2 feet and say what it wants to be and be what it wants to be. And for us, that's a lot of conservation areas. It's a lot of tree habitat. It's a lot of what we call wet woods or swamps. And it's a lot of meadows. And that's really the singular experience that I believe people will take away is there's about 20 miles of trails that bisect this site at full build out, but they will go through a series of landscape types that each one has its own personality and its own room. And our goal is to make a unique experience in the region. So it's not duplicating something that's there, but rather it's celebrating what's very special about the here. Be it an eastern cottonwood that you come into contact with, and you know how big those eastern cottonwoods get. They're giant. Well, imagine in 100 years what it's gonna be like to stand next to a row of them that are all well over 150 feet, 200 feet tall. Kind of like the redwoods of the Ohio River Valley. When you come across a meadow in the summer and the indigo buntings and the tanagers and the goldfinches and all the bird life with those brilliant colors are moving around and making all that noise, you won't know that you're within the center of an urban area or that you're on an old landfill or an old dump. You'll feel like you're in, what America was pre-1491. And then the interesting thing that I believe is the boldest part of this park, if you see the water there, this park's designed to flood. And it's going to flood a lot. And that's okay, because this park is going to be designed to flood. And for a visitor, you're going to be walking on elevated platforms above floodwaters. And I can tell you, because I've seen it firsthand myself, in the Buttonbush Woods area and in what we call the Marshall Wetlands and some of the areas when a flood happens, like we had a couple weeks ago, you see big fish swimming among trees. You have these very weird experiences. And we're going to give you the opportunity to experience that and to paddle in those trees where there's no current and it's very safe. And just have this out of world experience that you did not think was possible within 20 minutes of your house.
Well, we've got that screen pulled up, Scott. If you can, I know that Lucinda Sanders has been the architect behind this, and there are zones within this park. Can you speak a little bit about the zones that are envisioned for the park there?
Yeah. Can you see my mouse, my cursor?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The Clark Cabin Complex, a lot of people are familiar with, is what we call Cabin Bluff, and that's the old Spawn fish house. The Clark Cabin, there's an old Sears and Roebuck house there. The Greenway moves through it. We see all of that room or that space. Cindy tells us that's the heritage landscape of our community, where the stories of Native Americans, the Underground Railroad, Lewis and Clark, George Rogers Clark, the settlement, initial settlement of Clarksville, the old elementary school site, which is down in here. This all gets told, and this grounds, we believe, the state of Indiana's story in a very unique way. Adjacent to that site will be our lodge. This will be a special event venue for weddings, corporate events, large events, talking 300 plus people. And as a conservancy, we depend on the ability to generate revenue within the park at special venues and special events like this to maintain that free park that everyone will be able to enjoy for free. So that's one of the facilities that does it. What's really interesting, Michael, about this lodge is because we can place it at this location, it gives you that beautiful downstream view of the K&I Bridge. You'll be able to watch sunsets down the Ohio. And when you think about it, it's really unusual, but there's not really a lot of reservable facilities for special events on the Ohio River where you can enjoy and take in the Rivertown benefits. And this site allows us to do it and still be out of the floodway. The next area is Buttonbush Woods. This is one of the largest contiguous and remaining forest blocks of what we call wetwoods that used to take up about 99% of our community. We built a city here and removed a lot of it. This is the last remnant piece. So it's our largest forest block, and it's going to be a very rich ecological site with meadows, elevated walkways that'll take you into the treetops. So you can see things like flying squirrels, warblers in the spring. We're a couple weeks away from the warbler migration. You'll be able to get up in the trees and see those critters. And then river otter that live in Mill Creek and beaver. So a very wild area. Moving downstream, this is the Buffalo Trace Lawn. If folks know the CabX landfill, the Mars landfill, there's a lot of ongoing landfills there. And it's one of those situations of, you got a landfill next to the river, how do you make lemonade out of lemons? And the way we do it is we turn those big, huge mounds into glorious lawns with trees that edge them and trails that edge them. So this is where you go to fly a kite. Again, throw out a picnic, throw out a blanket and have a picnic with your family on a lawn and watch the river and watch the trail visitors go by. This white line that goes to the whole park is really the defining characteristic of the whole park. This is the social heart. This is its heartbeat. This is called the Infinity Loop, and it's a 5-kilometer long, totally separate trail, which means it doesn't cross any roads. You're never sharing a road. It exists in its own space. The Greenway and the Discovery Trail and future trails that we believe can come in will all connect to it. And that means you'll be able to get out there, bike, run, and walk, and never have to encounter a car. You'll be able to go through every type of room in the park that links the meadows and the forest and the lawns and the river all into one experience. The quarry ponds that are here now, we recommend opening and expanding those. They're filling in now a little bit. We think the ability to have that open water this close to Ohio is massively important, not just for the beauty and the paddling that people will do in it, and the paddle boards and the kayaking and the canoeing and the fishing, but for waterfowl, for ducks. Maybe if we're lucky one day, we'll even get sandhill cranes to come in here. So that's one of those destination experiences that against the woods and the meadow then frame things up. And then as you move your way back, this is base camp, as we call it. This is where our ranger station is located. This has tree houses that you can rent. This has a boathouse facility that you can rent. Another special event gathering location surrounded by a lawn. And this lawn was shaped by Cindy's team and then J.K. McKnight from the creator of the Forecastle Music Festival to think about what would be a good host for music festivals that could allow you to have multiple stages if you wanted to, and have the space just to celebrate the artists of our region. So those are the big moves. All of the dark trees finally are a lot of these are new. And what we project is 75,000 new trees into the site. We know we have an urban heat island problem here in our community. We know we have air quality problems. Well, we can help solve that by planting trees. So this would be the largest urban reforestation project in the history of the state of Indiana. And we like to think it would add air-conditioned lungs to our region that so desperately needs it.
That's really cool. And of course, a lot of this is still in the planning stages. Um, how, just a guess, and not to hold you to it or anything, but how soon might one expect to throw down a picnic blanket?
Yeah, good question and a very fair question. You are right. We are in what's called the master plan phase now, and we're moving now into design development and permitting. So we are advancing, although you don't see dirt moving out there yet. We're going to announce our first project very, very, very shortly, like in the next couple of weeks. That'll be the first amenity that people will be able to use, kind of our pilot project. And then we're going to begin capital fundraising later this year for the first phase. So we could put a shovel in the ground on those lawns and those big areas, like you mentioned, Mike, as early as 2022 or 2023 if we are successful in fundraising. It's very important to note, though, as well, a lot of this land is private land, and we do not have the power nor the desire to do eminent domain or condemnation. We work with willing land sellers. So land will be developed as it is acquired, and we see that as a staged process over time. That'll be a multi-decade project for total build-up, and that's normal and that's okay. Waterfront Park now across the way in Louisville is on its third decade and just beginning its fourth phase. So how this thing moves and advances over time, we know will just take time, both for the land to come on board and then for us to do the fundraising. But our board is, if anything, as business leaders are, focused on getting this thing as open as quickly as possible with the quality that's demanded in our region, and then the sustainable business plan behind it as well.
Great answer. Couple more questions. Tell us, first, let me ask you this. Tell us more about Scampering with Scott and how to register. I think that is really cool.
Well, there's the great thing about this parks work, Michael, as you know, is a lot of the crap we do in life revolves around spreadsheets and things you can't see. The great thing about parks is you can go out and you can see them. So what I'm doing is every month, if you go to our website, originpark.org, and you can sign up for a walk with me, and alliteration is our ally, so that's why you have the two S's in there. But it's a guided walk that we take of the site, and I can show you some of the areas that are going to become a park, show you some of the challenges we're dealing with. We generally encounter wildlife. You see the site as it lays today, and you get an idea of the hurdles that are to be overcome, but it's a chance to see it before it becomes a park and enjoyed by everyone. Generally, they're about 2 hours in length. We cover about 1.5 miles, so anybody can do it. Or you can, if you don't, if you get bored about halfway through, you can walk away from me too. My feelings aren't hurt. But what we do try to do is to show the different elements of the park. We roll out the park maps. You can ask questions and kick the tires and see what we've got out there. And again, it's just a very powerful way. It's one thing to talk about this with a computer screen and visuals. It's another thing to be out there on the ground itself. We were out there this morning on a site visit. The spring peepers are making noises like mad right now. If you get down to one of the wetlands, you can barely hear yourself think. The cardinals have started their mating call for the spring. The smells and the sound of spring are starting to surround us. So this is a chance to experience that all year long. And they are free, 100% free tours.
That is great. And how can one register?
Yeah, just go to the website, originpark.org. You'll see a sign up there. All you got to do is sign up.
And then we'll
send you the instructions.
That is Scampering with Scott. Typically, it's on Saturday morning.
Yeah, Saturday mornings right now. We'll add some weeknight events as the days get a little bit longer. Try to avoid the heat of the day, but for right now, they're Saturday mornings.
Great. Another question: What can the average citizen do to help or support the effort?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot that they can do already. Go to that website again. Thank you for the lead. You can sign up to be on our email list, and that'll dial you into all the volunteer activities that are going to be coming up shortly. We're going to do some citizen science out there. Lots of ways you can be a part of this park as it comes out of the ground, beyond the donations and the campaigning and all that stuff that comes on. So the way you want to do that is you want to get on the website and sign up for our email list, and then follow us on social media as well. This won't seem like a lot, but trust me, it is. If you pay attention to our social media feeds, we're very keen to point out special things that happen during the year out there that you can already see on the Greenway. So if you pay attention to that, we're going to be pointing out when different wildlife critters are seen, what's going on in the plant community, what's going on historically. Because the neat thing about not only the site, but where we live in the world is we have these 4 very distinct seasons. And that means you have a different outdoors to experience at least 4 times a year. And we want to get you focused and connected with those experiences, because if you slow down, tap the brakes a little bit, and just breathe in where we live, it will literally surprise you how close wildlife is to you and how close the edge of wilderness is to your front door.
And again, for those listening and tuning in, this is a regional park. It's not just a Clarksville park, not just a New Albany or Jeff Park. This is going to be a regional attraction that is going to attract people to this park from all over the region.
Yeah, it's designed to nest very comfortably with Cherokee Park and Shawnee and Iroquois and Jefferson Memorial Forest and the Parklands and Waterfront Park and Clark Memorial Forest. It's that's exactly the point. Is this is a bigger park than Clarksville or any of our communities. Clarksville's very lucky because the beginning of our state was in Clarksville and at this location, and this is not the stuff that you can relocate.
Right.
This site is crying out to have something special brought to it.
Right. I agree. Um, I would like to invite you once you make the big announcement to come back and let's readdress this if we can after your big announcement, and maybe we can get it out there a little bit more. And I appreciate you visiting with us. Um, before, unless you've got something else you would like to add before we go, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but there are a lot of supporters, there are a lot of donors, there are a lot of people who are helping to make this happen. And let me give you an opportunity to give a shout out um, to anyone now that you can.
Oh, that's a great. Thank you for being so thoughtful about that. We are very lucky, and I think that we've advanced this far in this span of time is due to support of folks like the Ogle Foundation, the Blue Sky Foundation, the Community Foundation of Southern Indiana, and I know it's very popular these days to whine and complain about government, but I got to tell you, we have had nothing but the support, encouragement, and resources of the Indiana state government, be it state parks or IDEM or DNR, the Corps of Engineers, the National Park Service. We've just had a lot of allies who have come to support, rally, and get behind this work because I think we got a couple neat things going on here, Michael. And one is our community, and I say our community broadly, is one of four communities in the United States of America where Frederick Law Olmsted, the father of landscape architecture, completed his whole system. It's Louisville, Buffalo, Boston, and Rochester. And when we go out and we talk about the value of city shaping parks, region shaping parks, as you said accurately, we have not that far to look back and say, look at what our forefathers did for us. And we stand on their shoulders when we say, okay, this is our legacy and our chance to do what they did for us going forward. So you can never thank the legacy enough of the folks that were before us who see these things as important and as ways to improve and make a community more livable. And what's really neat is I do feel like we're standing in the shadow of Olmsted, which is a good place to stand, because when you read his work, he always wanted to do a park in Southern Indiana. There's a little bit of a tinge of regret that he didn't get to expand his system to the North Shore of the Ohio. I like to think in some ways we're picking up the ball and carrying it forward for him and completing the system for our whole region.
Olmsted, by the way, is one of the designers of the Vanderbilt mansion and
Yep,
that park system in North Carolina and the New York City Central Park. Am I not correct?
you are correct.
Well, we appreciate. I'm not going to hold you up a whole lot longer, but I appreciate you coming on and filling us in, and we look forward to your big announcement that's coming up very soon. Again, for those that are tuning in, this interview will be available on YouTube, Facebook, and Scott Martin, the executive director of the River Heritage Foundation, and the face now of uh, our of switching screens here, the face of Origin Park. And Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, and I hope you come back and anytime you need a forum or a voice, please reach out and let me know, and happy to help make that.
I appreciate it. This is just a really exciting time. It's not every generation doesn't get a chance to do this sort of work, and the stars appear to be aligning to do it. So we're excited to make it happen, man.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us, and thanks everybody for joining us. And for now, we'll say take care and so long. But be watching for some exciting things to happen at Origin Park. Again, you can go to the River Heritage Foundation website. Look him up on Facebook, Scott. You're on Facebook, Origin Park,
Mhm.
and you have a group. Join the group, hit that like button, and that way you will be notified when things are announced, events are coming up. So thanks again, Scott, and it's good talking to you.
Great to talk to you as always.
Take care.